What's up everyone? Lance Hedrick here, and we are on the Gary Horn Grinding and Brewing Solution YouTube page. I know, it's weird, it's different, it's a whole thing. But what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna show you my beloved Bentwood that I use very frequently at home. I really enjoy this grinder. I'm gonna show you how I dial in filter coffee using the Bentwood. So first things first, we're gonna wanna zero our Bentwood. So make sure that you have your Bentwood completely calibrated. Now the way that you do that is very simple. You simply go finer. I would turn it off first, obviously. You don't want it turning on while you're doing this. We're gonna go finer and finer and finer until we have that the burrs locked. Now mine is calibrated, so it is at the 0, you don't need to see that. But whenever they're locked and they can't move anymore, like you don't want to go too hard, but if you see my fingers are like turning white, I'm pushing, can't move it, I'm at 0. So if you're doing it and you're locked and it's not at 0, what I recommend doing is there should be a little hole on here, and I'm gonna tilt this machine so you see it. There's a little hole on this collar right here, okay? You need to find an Allen wrench that fits that little tiny hole, and you're gonna loosen that hole. And then once it's loosened, you're gonna turn this, and what that's gonna do is control the numbers. You're gonna turn it until the 0 lines up with that red dash, all right? And then tighten it back up and loosen it back up before you start grinding. But that is how you're gonna calibrate your grinder, so that at 0, that's when the burrs are locked. Now there are some people who calibrate it differently, but for the purposes of this video and how I'm dialing in, that's how I have mine calibrated, is once they are fully locked. Some people like to do 0 at chirp, I do it at lock. All right, now that we have that, let's move along. All right, so today I've got this coffee that I just picked up when I was in New York last week from Nomad, one of my favorite roasters out in Barcelona. This is a black honey processed El Salvador Las Brisas. It is a quote-unquote espresso roast, but they roast really lightly. It's not gonna be too dark. So we're gonna dial this in. I'm really excited about it. Whenever Nomad puts something out, I definitely hop on it. But anyway, so this is brand new, unopened, so it's gonna be my first time to brew this coffee. So we'll truly get to dial this in together. I'm gonna use a V60 today because a lot of people love the V60. So I'm gonna brew on the V60. The first, I'm gonna do a 20-gram recipe with 340 grams of water. So I'm just gonna, that's kind of my go-to when I'm dialing in a new bean, around that 1:17 ratio when I'm doing lighter roasted coffees. Now let me tell you, if you're not doing a really lightly roasted coffee, I would not recommend a 1:17 ratio. I would recommend maybe 1:16 or even 1:15, depending on how dark you're going, and anywhere in between. The darker your coffee is, the more it is roasted, the more soluble it will become, the easier it is to extract, the easier it is to access those really bitter compounds that you might not want in your coffee. So keep that in mind whenever you're deciding that go-to recipe. For me, it's a 1:17. I also like to start on the Bentwood at a 650 micron setting. So my first brew is going to be 20 grams of coffee, 340 grams of water at a 650 micron setting. All right, so I'm single dosing the Bentwood today. So you see I've got this weird looking little puffer ball on top. I got this, it was part of a bug duster kit, but it fits, and so I'm using it. This is a good way when you're single dosing to make sure you don't have retention. So yeah, I'm gonna use that today. All right, so I'm gonna dose out my coffee and then you'll see me grind it up and we'll continue there. Here we go. Alrighty, we've got our coffee ground, and I'm gonna wet the filter and have it all ready right now. That is the grind size, 650 microns. That's what it looks like. I put a divot in the middle. We're at 20 grams. Now we're gonna do a brew. I'm just gonna do a brew that I typically go to, which is 3 times the weight of the coffee. This has been a brew I've been obsessed with lately. 3 times the weight of the coffee, and then I'm gonna swirl pretty aggressively, just to ensure it's all really saturated. I'm gonna replace my kettle, just make sure it stays at temperature. I'm at 210 degrees Fahrenheit, which in Celsius is 98 degrees. So I'm gonna let it sit there to maintain temp, because I'm gonna let this bloom for a couple of minutes, and then 2 minutes to be precise. And then I'm gonna pour the rest of my brew water in one pour. So you'll see that here in a second. But anyway, I'm gonna let this rest and we'll see you in a second. All right, 2 minutes is up. We're gonna pour up to weight, which is 340. So I start up pretty high, pretty aggressively to ensure all that CO2 is nice and released, and also trying to ensure that we are really pushing that extraction with a high agitation. Since we're only doing a 2-pour brew, we want to make sure we're manipulating the variables we have control over to really take advantage. All right, we're at 340, there we go. I'm gonna take this little stir stick. I'm just gonna stir the very top portion, and I'm gonna give it some swirls to ensure that we level that bed out. All right, so we take this, just stir to kind of ensure there's a little motion in it. That's gonna help us not have boulders stick on the wall, and it's gonna help to eject some of the fines into that paper filter. But anyway, there we go. And we're gonna kind of just tailor it as it goes down. Really make sure we have that flat bed. So once we're done here, I'm gonna give it a taste, and we're gonna see what changes we need to make on the Bentwood. And we're gonna take into account the fact that the coarser you go, the less fines there are. So even though it'll depend on the taste, whether or not we wanna fine it up or we wanna coarse it up, just based on how clean it tastes, what the finish is like, what the acidity is like, what the sweetness is like. We're gonna ruminate over the cup, and we'll figure out which direction to go in order to have this specific coffee dialed. I'm really excited. This is the first time I've had this coffee since I bought it. So yeah, let's see how this goes. All right, so we have this now brewed. I'm just gonna give it a little tippy tap tap, tippy tip tip tap. I'm gonna show you that bed. See how nice and flat that is. Of course, that's from the little shake and swirl, the shake and bake. Let me take this, and I'm gonna put it there. Boom, look at that. Nice place for it to drip. All right, so now I'm gonna take a little whiff. There's like nice deep plum on that. I mean, it's like a raisiny sweetness. So it's really full smelling. If the body matches this syrupy sweet smell, then I mean, I think we're in a good place. But let's see. And pull just a little bit so it's not too hot. Let's see. Okay, on the palate it's a little more weak than I would like. Yeah, it definitely needs to be fined up. So this has a weaker body. It's much more tea-like. It's honestly, it kind of tastes like I don't know, what's that? What am I thinking of? I don't know, it's tea-like. There was a tea I was thinking of that's raisiny, and I can't think of what it is. But it's like a raisin tea, honestly. It's very light and delicate. But in a way, like that does sound good, but it's in a way that's like a little too weak and like not vegetal, but it's definitely on the underside. So I'm going to actually fine it up a good bit. I'm gonna go down to about 615, 610, 615, and I'm gonna grind again. So I'm gonna do this again. This actually, I mean, it makes sense. Typically when I do 650, it's for a little darker roasted coffee, it's a little bit more developed. So getting closer to 600 kind of makes sense. I also am not, it's not outside of my character to brew around 500, 550. That's if I'm really trying to push extraction on something. These El Salvador coffees tend to be quite soluble, so I started at that 650, but we're gonna go down to about 610, and we're gonna rebrew this once more. Yeah, because I want to have a little bit more body to it, and I want the sweetness in the cup, the sweetness I got from the aroma, to match in the cup. So I'm finding the grind up. I'm going to maintain the same temperature, the same ratio, everything else. I'm just going to find the grind up because I do believe that the culprit here is the grind size and not the ratio or the water temperature or even the brew itself. So. Yeah, there's no unpleasant finishes. There's nothing like that. It just needs to be a little bit more robust. So I'm gonna clap and I'll have it all ready to go. All right, so to just address something real quick, whenever you change grind sizes, if you're in a cafe, I would recommend, dropping a bean or two to get through and get out what is gonna stay in those burrs. If you're single dosing like I have been, I have not found a need to kind of do what's called clearing out the burrs. So I just went straight to grinding the next one. So anyway, just thought I would bring that up. And also there's a valid point that is likely gonna be raised of why I chose to go finer as opposed to adding coffee or taking water away and changing the ratio. And the reason is because you can kind of taste the difference if it's a higher extraction versus it's just not enough strength from the brew itself. So truncating the recipe itself would be a way to increase your concentration, whereas what I'm doing going finer is I'm trying to increase the extraction of what's already here. So with a weak taste I was tasting was more so from an under extraction as opposed to just a low strength with a high extraction, if that follows. So I hope you follow there. But anyway, I'm gonna brew this next one up. We have it all ready to go. Let me clear out the timer because it's still showing. There we go. And here we go. Boop. I like to start up high, do some quick circles, go up to 60 grams, and boom, there we go. And vigorous swirls. And then the 2-minute wait begins. All right, so 2 minutes is up. We're gonna do the next pour. Here we go. Start in the center. pouring rapidly, aggressively, trying to fill this brewer quickly. That'll help spike the temperature. And I'm gonna use as much of the filter as possible to remove as many fines as I can. Being quite aggressive to increase the agitation as much as I can. And we're almost at that 340 mark, and there we are. So there we go. I'm gonna give it a nice swirl to ensure I get that nice flat bed. And then I'm gonna kind of keep this stirring going. I'm gonna keep that motion going to, as long as that slurry is spinning, it can help eject some fines into that paper filter, but I also don't want a dome to form. So you can do a little shake and it'll still be spinning, so all good. All right. Now we just wait for it to draw down completely. All right, so again, here's the bed. Again, nice flat, nice bed. Got a lot of fines caught in those ridges. So I'm gonna take this, put it to the side. And as you can see, it's also a nice dry bed. And that's because we did remove fines, but there weren't a ton of fines. Sometimes you still have a muddy bed. This does a really good job with its particle distribution. So we have that brewed. It took about 20 seconds longer than before. So we're gonna give this a taste. Let's go ahead and smell the aroma. It's a much deeper sweetness this time. It has like a brown sugar note that accompanies that kind of plum type prune smell. It smells really good. Like I can almost smell the granularity of that sweetness, that sugar. There we go. I could probably go even 10 microns finer, 20 microns finer, but this has a much more velvety, smooth body. Honestly, there's a little, now that it's down here when the extraction's a little higher, there's almost like a little citric acidity that's peeping its head through, almost like a mandarin orange. Like tamarind. It has like, it's got like a malic citric acidity like tamarind. It's really good. Oh, they have raisin on here and they put peach. I don't get much stone fruit, but I get like that mandarin orange. Cocoa powder. I can get a little cocoa. Yeah, a little cocoa sitting on the back. That is a good cup. That is a really good cup. Like I said, I definitely get that mandarin. I get like tamarind. I get that raisin, pruny type flavor. But yeah, so that's kind of my approach when dialing in a filter coffee. Specifically when I'm using a V60, I kind of start around that 600 to 650 range, and that's kind of where you'll live for pour overs. Of course, if you want to really increase your extraction, you can go down to like 500. If you're doing a really big brew, like in a 40, 50 gram Chemex, you can go even higher to like 675 or so. But that's kind of my approach on the Bentwood. I think it does a great job for filter. Makes really sweet brews that are really accentuate the body and the sweetness and the syrupy characters of the coffees. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it helpful. And if you have a Bentwood or if your shop has a Bentwood, I hope that you can take some of this and put it into practice. You have an awesome grinder on hand. I'm stoked to have one. You should be too. Anyway, brew something tasty today, and cheers.